Hi, this is Dr. Riley. I was just wanted to talk to you today about anxiety and lifestyle. This is definitely a thing that we're seeing a lot more of. And basically, one of the things that we see when people struggle with anxiety is they don't realize that it's actually a lack of balance inside their body. That when someone is struggling with anxiety, they're having too much of what we call the fight or flight, right? Instead of rest and digest, right? And this is all governed by hormones. And yeah, your particular health can actually really affect whether or not you're an anxiety kind of person. Certainly, your genetics can affect this kind of stuff. If everyone in your family is an anxious kind of person, then like even in the womb, you probably are more likely to become an anxious kind of person. But it's not like this is your destiny, right? This is definitely something that has increased in just the short time that I've been a pediatrician. And it really is from a lack of balance in how kids are living their lives nowadays, right? So this is this is just one of the many things that drive me crazy. So what we're going to talk a lot about today is how to regain the balance that we need, right? We have to make sure that our kids, as they're growing, they're not going to get themselves into trouble, right? Because one of the things that I have noticed is that more and more kids are going to college or in college ending up on different medicines like Zoloft or Prozac. And it shouldn't have to be this way, right? It was not something that was always this way. So we have to really figure out the cause and attack it. And it seems like there are things that we can do when we start seeing the symptoms of anxiety. We have two other videos that I've uploaded, and probably there'll be many more to come that talk about this kind of stuff, where we learn how to make a diagnosis and look for other treatment options that we have that we use that when you go to your doctor, they can help you with to help ameliorate the symptoms of anxiety. So what are some of the things that we're going to see? So just a little bit of sciencey kind of stuff. Um, so the anxiety system, we can think of it as maybe being too much of the sympathetic nervous system being activated. And this is the balance that happens in our body, right? So if you have more of the sympathetic nervous system being activated, then you start not feeling good. And same thing as if you have too much of the parasympathetic um, nervous system. So what you have to find is the place in between, the balance. And that's what we're going to do. And there are three main things that we can kind of change in our lives that allow this to happen. And one of them is diet, right? As anyone who knows me, this is one of my big things. So, yeah, not surprisingly, if you drink alcohol to excess, you start to malfunction. And one of the ways that you can malfunction is through having symptoms of anxiety. So, so if you're drinking a lot of alcohol, then don't, right? But probably the reason why I'm seeing even kids 12 years old and 13 years old, that are starting to have anxiety and so young is not because they're drinking a lot of alcohol. I guess it can be coffee and energy drinks. The first time I had a cup of coffee was when I was in college, and I'm half Colombian, right? So you would think that would have been something they would have given to me in my baby bottle. But no, it's sugar and all these kind of fake foods that we're giving our kids. They don't have enough nutrients, and they actually will cause kids to have various kind of things. I think that people are not surprised when they see me and I tell them that their kid has become pre-diabetic or have high cholesterol or have liver problems. But when I tell them that their kid has become depressed or anxious because of the food they're eating, sometimes they look at me kind of quizzically. But this is definitely a thing. And the next few slides, I'm going to show you how this works, right? Because we know all the science behind it, right? So even if you don't understand the science, I would say just trust me, right? Because the next option when a kid is suffering from a lot of anxiety is that they usually will go to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist, doesn't do a lot of this kind of stuff normally, and their first option is usually the first option is counseling, in fairness, but really, if your body is sick because you're not eating healthy food, counseling only helps you so much. You need to give it everything it needs. So, so I promised you that I would show you some of this kind of stuff. But before I move on, I just want to just emphasize things like energy drinks, anything that has this kind of unnatural coloring, processed foods. Um, so any kind of like any of these kind of chemicals, if you were to Google some of the chemicals that you're feeding your children, you'll find that some of them are actually banned in other countries, because they have actually been shown in studies to cause people to have anxiety. And and you'll go through this process where you'll be angry, but it's the kind of thing that normally we want people um, to realize that, just because you made a mistake in the past doesn't mean that you're going to be making mistakes in the future. So this is one of the things that we see is we see that, um, sugar, like when you drink sugary drinks, this actually has an effect on your adrenaline. So what this slide shows is adrenaline here on the left, time on the bottom. And you could see at 0, they give the kids something to drink. So usually it's the kind of thing that normally as you drink a sugary drink, it has effects in your body. But surprisingly, or at least surprisingly to me, was that it takes a couple of hours before you actually see the adrenaline starting to go up after you give something like orange juice or something like that. So I could see a poor mom in the audience being like, "Oh my gosh, are you telling me, Dr. Riley, that I give my kid healthy orange juice at 7 or 8 o'clock?" Or they get it at school, and then about 3 hours later, this is why the teacher is having problems at midday because of the sugary drink that I gave them. Maybe. So, but it has a simple cure that you try not to give sugary drinks first thing in the morning. And even for some kids, I don't even really let them have too much, like even milk, right? Because it's the kind of thing, milk certainly sometimes causes kids to have problems. And we try to save it maybe for for lunch or after school or something like that at a time where they can be more active, right? Because normally the schools nowadays, they're not exactly encouraging kids to be active. They're trying to encourage them to be sedentary, which we'll see later on also causes them to become more anxious. This is kind of a graph. I was searching for a way to kind of explain to people how our body works in this respect. It's when we eat something with sugar, our insulin goes up, but our body works this way where it has counter-regulatory hormones. So usually as the insulin goes up, that actually can cause our sugar to go down. But what if it goes down too much? That would be very bad, right? So luckily, God made our bodies very smart. And as the sugar starts going down, we start releasing these hormones to allow our sugar to go up, to kind of balance it so we don't overshoot. Unfortunately, one of these hormones is adrenaline. So now you get the idea like, this is why eating some of these sugary foods, that's why they're putting pressure on me not to have sugary foods when my kid has anxiety, because this is what's happening. You eat a high glycemic index food. So these are foods like cereal, pancakes, waffles, bagels, a lot of these very typical sugary kind of breakfasts. These are high glycemic kind of foods. And then the high glycemic is the red. And you could see that spikes your insulin more. And the higher the glycemic index, or really like the more junky the food is, then the more adrenaline the kid gets. So, like when I have my hyperactive kids, I usually tell them, oh, no, no, no. You are not supposed to be eating these high glycemic foods. Try to give them something like eggs or a soup or something that's very low GI, right? Because you see, low GI kind of foods are things that cause the adrenaline not to be raised and perhaps help them with some of this kind of stuff. This is one of the reasons why when we have kids who have problems sleeping, we try, within a few hours of going to bed to not give them something that's a high glycemic index kind of food. Even things that you might think of as being like healthy, like pretzels or something like that, are very high glycemic index kind of foods. And if you want to learn more about this, luckily the internet is replete with articles about high glycemic index foods. But yes, nobody comes to see me because they eat too many eggs, even though I'm a cholesterol specialist, right? So usually that's been the classic kind of breakfast for a long time. So eggs, certainly with some water, that would definitely be a kind of breakfast that's good for people who have high anxiety. So certainly we encourage people to sum up in terms of their diet, drink a lot of water, eat simple foods, right? If you're eating foods that other people make, so certainly if you bake your own potato versus buying French fries at Chick-fil-A or something, you will get yourself into more anxiety kind of episodes from eating the French fries than you will by eating a baked potato that you made yourself, which you know the ingredients of, or a roasted potato probably is even better, especially the ones that are more like the natural kind of potatoes, which are fairly small. We want people to eat more foods like fish, like real food. Definitely, they've done studies where people are more mentally healthy the more servings of fish they have in a day, and eat less of the especially processed starchy foods. So certainly, I don't want to tell people that it's necessarily bad to eat something like turnip, which is very excellent, but unfortunately, when I tell people that that I don't ban starchy foods, the first thing they want to have is some kind of starchy pasta or macaroni and cheese or some other thing that raises their insulin a lot. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's definitely more healthy to eat cauliflower rice than regular rice, because the cauliflower rice does not give any adrenaline at all. That would be a very low GI kind of food. So that would actually make you healthier. So let's move on. So sleep. So it's very surprising to parents when I tell them during their physicals that the number one reason why I send kids to the psychologist at 14 is because that's when they've decided to not sleep the number of hours their body needs to sleep. So when they do studies, it seems like when you are in elementary school, you are supposed to sleep 11 hours. When you are in junior high school, you are supposed to sleep 10 hours. And when you are in high school, you're supposed to sleep 8 to 9 hours. 8 to 9 hours means probably 9 hours, but we're willing to live with eight, which unfortunately, when I tell people eight, they think, I could probably do okay with seven. No, eight. So yeah, and unfortunately, for every half an hour that someone gets less than 8 hours worth of sleep in that high school age, we see that they're much more likely to end up on a medicine or to like have to go to see the psychologist and things like that. So if you do not want these things in your life, start today. Try to make sure that one of the things that you emphasize for your kids is to make sure they get enough sleep, right? So I have a few different studies on this slide, and you can look at it later. But basically, the end point is this: it is hard to be healthy if you do not prioritize sleep. People who do not try to be healthy, they're the ones who end up being unhealthy, and they're the ones who end up taking medicines. And mental health is just like any other kind of health. If you don't try to be mentally healthy, you're going to become mentally unhealthy. So yes, we have to make sure that we get sleep. If you are struggling with getting sleep, sometimes you need to come to see somebody like me to figure out if you're like doing something wrong in terms of going to sleep, or you're like a very typical thing I see with girls especially is that they'll become low in iron or vitamin D. We could figure that out very easily by doing blood tests, or that they're low in other kind of vitamins and we'll prescribe them special kind of vitamins. But yeah, it's definitely a thing. And if you're struggling, then yes, like we have to figure it out. And unfortunately, the caveat to not sleeping is my old friend coffee, right? Which a lot of times the kids end up starting to drink coffee, and this will make them more anxious, obviously, but because it's a drug and people get addicted to it, even when the kids are suffering from anxiety, a lot of times they don't want to give it up because, and then they come to me with all these kind of like, well, I don't think the coffee is a real problem for me, Dr. Riley. No, it's a problem for everybody who has anxiety. That is not a thing. Again, I'm half Colombian. It's not like I'm immune to the effects of coffee. It's not like I'm genetically better. Everybody, when they get caffeine, their caffeine is only metabolized at a certain rate. So that means if you drink a cup of coffee at, let's say, 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, yeah, almost like a quarter to a third of it is still in your body when you're trying to go to sleep, which means like if you have 1 cup, that means it's like, okay, time to go to bed. Let me drink a third of a cup of coffee. No, bad, bad, bad. So yeah. So if I feel like these videos are mainly by moms who are going to be watching it. So, but if you're a kid watching this, I would say, yeah, this is part of, as you get older, we have to kind of say, you know what? We have to have a certain discipline about how we live. For moms, I would say this is when you pull out your mom hammer and you make sure that the kids are not really drinking anything with caffeine, which can be hard. I see some kids 8 years old and the school is not helping you because they're giving them caffeine at school, and it's called chocolate milk, right? And it's not only is it caffeine, but it's also sugar, right? Which we already saw that that's not helpful. So it's a double whammy. So yeah, so we're gonna have to make changes, right? So this is the not easy part, is that when you have something like the anxiety, that obviously you got to Anxietyville by walking a certain path. So we're going to have to change our path if we're going to go to a place that's more healthy. And the last is exercise, which a simple thing we can do, like when we have a teenager, they're fairly addicted to carrying their phones everywhere, is we ask them to put on their pedometer app on their phone and then ask them to monitor how many steps they take in a day. And it seems like taking at least 5,000 steps is what's considered to be the dividing line between being sedentary or not. And unfortunately, it's the kind of thing when I ask kids to do this, a lot of times they look at their phone and they're like, oh my God. And they kind of want to hide it from their mom. They're like, almost like, how do I delete this app so nobody sees? Because yeah, Steve Jobs has been keeping track of how many steps you've been taking since you bought your phone, and it's actually in a way a good thing that they're invading your privacy this way. But it's the kind of thing that, yeah, if you do not take enough steps in your day, that's not how you are genetically engineered. You are genetically engineered to be taking a certain amount of steps every day. And when you don't do that, it's the same thing like not getting enough sleep. It's the same thing like not eating correctly. You will get sick. You can imagine it sort of like these kids who stay in bed all day with their phone. Your body, when it senses that you're doing nothing but laying in your bed all day, it figures you must be sick. So it actually starts sending out some of these signals as if you were sick. Whereas actually just walking, which it doesn't have to be anything really strenuous. I mean, obviously I put in here some of these recommendations where it says to be active a certain amount every week and to do a bit of strength training and things like that. And certainly that's what I try to do for myself. It is the kind of thing that just the simple walk. Like when I see my obese patients, yeah, when they do studies on people who have lost 30 pounds, 95% of them, the only exercise they did was walking for 30 minutes a day. It's not a lot, but unfortunately, the schools, they are not interested in your health. They have other kind of things that they're interested in, and they have made gym, which for me was almost like twice a day back in the day when I had all black hair, um, to now like just every other day, maybe like not even every other day, because it's really just like twice a week a lot of times for a short period of time. And if they make you do anything, it's 1,000 steps, which is like walk a mile or something like that, which that is not a lot, right? So yeah, so usually what we say is like try to see if we can kind of increase our activity level. And if you keep track of that, you're going to notice that you're going to be much happier, having much less anxiety. Your body is going to be in balance, and then yeah, maybe you won't have to come and see me, right? That would be great, right? Certainly, the estimates on how much we spend on mental health in the United States are staggering. So the more money that we can spend, the more money we have to spend on other things. So yeah, just remember it's all about the balance, right? So it's like the three parts of a stool, right? That you want to eat right, sleep right, exercise right. And if you do that, then everything's going to be right up here and we're all going to be good. So hopefully this was helpful for you. If you have any other questions, certainly I'm always available and you can just reach out to us, make it an appointment for a consult, and I would think that would be good. All right, have a nice day.